by far the most graphics I've ever made for a podcast.
Nice.
There's like 18. And this is the...
Are you recording?
Yes. What's going on, everyone? This is the Aggie Gameday Extra Podcast. I'm senior Texas A&M sportswriter Travis Brown here at KBTX. We got the usual crew back here. Over here, Tyler Shaw, sports director. Over there, Max Crawford, chief meteorologist. Max, you got to go out and experience a new part of the country.
The Mountain West.
That I think,
well,
if I heard right, you were not super thrilled about the locale of this meteorological nerd convention.
No, I don't know if I just wasn't in a good mood about it that day or something, but Tyler and I think Morgan swear that I was just talking down on Boise, Idaho. I don't recall doing that. I recalling people when I would say I'm going to Boise, a lot of people would be like, Boise, what's there? So
Blue
I don't
turf.
know. I didn't get to see it. Post Malone did perform there while I was there, but I didn't go.
At the stadium?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he was there with Jelly Roll. But I really liked it. And I guess maybe I was like talking down on it earlier. And again, I apologize because Boise was awesome. It was like, I think it was like if you take a really solid college town and put it in the mountain. Honestly, it was kind of like Fayetteville, but drier and not quite as hilly in town. It was... and like very walkable, a little bit busier than Fayetteville. It was.
But it
awesome.
has like a legit downtown. Like
yes.
Yeah, it's
buildings
like
and
legit city-ish.
Yeah,
you know,
exactly. It's the capital, and so like you kind of have like street views, kind of like Austin, where you can see the Capitol building from a couple of different landmarks and things like that. I was in an Uber twice, and that was to get from the airport to the hotel, and then from the hotel to the airport. So like very, very walkable. There's like 3 or 4 breweries, a ton of coffee houses, plenty of places to eat. So it was a good time. And I racked up like 10 to 12,000 steps every day just walking from place to place. So it was good.
Have you done You're kind of colleged up in that area. Have you done Boise before?
I have. I've done the Smurf Turf before because I covered a BYU Boise State game.
Okay.
I was going to say that's Mountain West territory, but not anymore.
No.
That's Pac-12 territory now.
Yeah, it's new Pac-12.
Yeah.
Well, I know some people from Boise, and it's funny because they are adamant by saying they're not from Idaho, they're from Boise. Because to them, it's different. You know,
I feel that way, too. You could kind of get that vibe there.
Where it's like, there's Idaho, and it's got its all old conceptions, like, what even is Idaho? But then
what even is Idaho?
But people in Boise are like, no, we're not the rest of the state. We're Boise. They're very proud but it is a cool town.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Campus was really pretty. It was. I loved it.
Rest in peace, MWC. That was our college experience. Was the old Mountain West.
It's a fun conference.
Yeah.
Now Texas State's in the Pac-12, so what even is life? Let's go ahead and get into our main conversation here because I think, as I said before, this is the most graphics I've ever made for a podcast. So if you're listening to this, you might want to tune in on the old KBTX.com. I went out, bought all of the preview magazines. You might be familiar with some of these, like the old Lindy's, Athlon. We got Dave Campbell's down here.
The Bible.
Don't show the Dave Campbell's one.
It's a great cover.
Late.
I
already have the covers and all the graphics.
It's fine.
The Dave Campbell's. We got the Phil Steele here, and of course they like to rank different aspects of these teams' preview, if you will, the seasons. So I went through all of these, plus the new EA 26 college football 26 video game to kind of pull out some tidbits about what everybody has to say about A&M, and I think we'll kind of go through some of these, debate some of these. I think the biggest probably portion of debate's going to go around the SEC order of finish that most of these schools have, or some of the kind of top 25 rankings. What magazine should we start out with first? Anybody? Any suggestion?
I would just throw in. Let's go Dave Campbell's.
Let's go Dave Campbell's.
And
let's
see that.
Little Dave Campbell's.
Show the
AI-generated Sark
we got
image.
Here, let's we can,
the front cover
Crawford.
is Sark. No, don't put it on that camera angle.
Here you go.
Show
Right
the
there.
back cover. The back cover is
But
better.
to me, so the shading of that picture makes it look AI. Maybe it's just me. I don't know, but it.
Show the back cover
I
now.
kind of like this shot. Right
Stop
here.
it.
Yeah, right
quit,
there.
Just quit it. Nobody
makes me-
listening. People listening have no idea what's going on. He's holding it in front. Yeah, that's much better.
There
Let's
you go.
show the Dairy Queen on
They
the.
have the
Texas
high school-
staple.
The high school football cover in here with who is that?
I don't know.
Salina. Oh, they're a good team.
So yeah, there you go.
Dairy
Didn't
Queen.
what the year that Jimbo was there with like the whiteboard and stuff and like the guru thing? Didn't we do very poorly that year?
I think so.
Cool. All right.
I think so.
Sark.
I can't actually remember.
I grew my whole
ahead.
childhood thinking that Dairy Queen was exclusively in Texas.
I did too.
And then I moved.
Me too.
And then I moved out of Texas and
it's
realized
like,
they're everywhere.
These are everywhere.
I don't even think they originated in Texas.
No,
did
I
they?
I don't think so. Because
but-
you always hear the DQ.
Yeah, the marketing
That's
is
what
so
I
good.
like about and I just thought it was a Texas thing and realized it's
yeah,
not.
Texas Roadhouse is based out of Kentucky.
Yeah,
so.
that's true.
Okay,
I thought it
here's
was
the
Indiana.
Jimbo.
But anyway.
Let's see. We're gonna go to Dave Campbell's archives here. Why isn't this working? Anyway,
Oh, I like the Vince Young and Reggie McNeil one.
yeah,
I think that was actually like when I really truly started to follow college football beyond just A&M football. Was
Vince
when I
Young
saw
years.
that cover, because all of a sudden I realized like that there were people around me who were Longhorns fans, and I decided I don't like that, and so ever since I've been
That was
miserable.
2018. So the 2018 season.
Oh no, well we did well. We did fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, because that was when that was Jimbo's first
Correct.
year.
Correct.
I thought there was one where he was like, where he was like writing on a whiteboard or something. Maybe not. Anyway.
No,
It's
that
fine.
was Tom Herman.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
it was.
That was
You're
Tom Herman, where
right.
they had like the glass panel.
Yeah,
Um,
that's what I was thinking.
yeah,
and
yeah,
they
yeah,
did
yeah.
poorly that year.
Yeah, that is true.
That's funny.
Well, so what we have here, we'll start with Dave Campbell's. Some of the superlatives that they had for Texas
Tom
A&M.
Herman. Sorry, I haven't heard that name in a long time.
Okay, cool. Gig 'em.
Okay, cool. Yeah, there you
Yeah.
go.
40 coaches under 40. Offensive coordinator Colin Klein was ranked in there. They had a less polls and stuff to pull from, so it'll be different from some of the other ones. But they had their season prediction: A&M going 8-4. The ceiling was 10-2 for the Aggies. The floor was 5-7, and in their top 25, they had A&M coming in as number 15. What do we think about that season prediction? I'll actually pull it up in the magazine so we can get a little
So
bit more.
is that a preseason ranking?
That is
To start the season.
That is
they're-
starting the season ranking.
See, but I see a way that they finish 8-4 and could still finish ranked number 15. I think it could happen. But anyway, go ahead, Tyler.
Depending on what those 4 losses
Right,
are.
exactly.
Honestly, I think at this point, 8-4 seems fair. I know people be down with that. Well, why not 9 wins? Why not 10? I think the schedule's tough enough where you could have an 8-4 season, but still, I don't know, feel good about it, but at least feel good about the direction of the program.
Okay, here's
Depending
what
on how those 4 losses go.
here's what they have: UTSA win, Utah State win, Notre Dame loss, Auburn, Mississippi State, Florida, at Arkansas, all 4 wins, loss at LSU, loss against South Carolina, loss against Texas, and then a Missouri win and a Samford win wedged in there. That's 8-4. The ceiling, they say the ceiling at 10-2 would be if Marcel Reed takes the next step. The defense is good, and that they hold serve at home. So that means that they would have to win against South Carolina and take a couple on the road. They say that the floor has to do with the fact that they do travel to Missouri, to LSU, to Arkansas, so that some of those road trips might slip up a little bit.
Somebody's going to clip this at some point. That's like the 3rd time I've heard somebody talk about like, oh, they have to go play at Mizzou. Okay.
I don't
I
quite
think
know what Missouri has this year.
And that's not a knock on Columbia or Missouri or anything like that, but if you look at the way that the series has gone between A&M and Missouri, I'm pretty sure we've won more at Missouri than we have at Kyle Field.
Well, they've only played Missouri once in Columbia, I believe, since they've been in the SEC.
And we
at
won.
least once, if not twice. Yeah, it was a win.
Well, no, because Johnny's second year we played at Missouri and we lost.
Okay, yeah.
But anyway, I just I don't know.
Yeah, Missouri's not daunting, but I think A&M has to continue, and they proved a little bit last year, but then you continue to prove that they are a road team. And can excel. Even last year against a really bad Mississippi State team, there were kind of a little bit struggles there.
And I will agree with Dave Campbell's here that, yes, if we lose to Missouri on the road, then we probably will go 5-7 because that's one of the easier road conference games, in my humble opinion. And again, we can clip this, and that week after we can play it and shame me, but that's not the game that I'm worried about particularly. I'm not a frequenter of the college football Reddit, but occasionally I'll see tweets. And my favorite was that the ceiling was 8-4. The prediction was 8-4,
and the floor was
8-4. Yeah, that's about right.
That's about what we can expect.
So that's the superlatives. Let's look at this. Is the interesting one. The other outlets have SEC orders of finish. Dave Campbell's Texas Football doesn't do the whole SEC because only A&M and Texas are in it, but they do have a Texas power poll. And so here's what they think the 13 FBS teams in the state of Texas. Of course, they're Texas A&M coming in at number 3 behind number 1 Texas and number 2 Texas Tech.
Yeah, that's going to boil someone's blood over here.
That's so dumb.
That we are now in the Red Raiders by championships era ? They have really gone out and monetized this unsettling year before the full implementation of the House settlement. Gone out. They had a number 1 transfer recruiting class this year. Are we bullish on the Red Raiders?
No.
We haven't seen them play yet,
and it is because I hate them.
Is this going to be a 2021 Texas A&M? That's just what Yeah, you got some great recruits, and they'll be an interesting team. But man, let's see them play some games.
Can I also say, Sam Houston beat a lot of teams last year.
Yeah,
and I know they have a new coach and all that, but I don't know. Just putting Sam at the bottom seems a little lazy to me.
Yeah. I don't know. Rice. I would probably flip UTEP and Sam Houston. In this
I
power
would at least
poll.
give I don't think Sam Houston's the worst football team in the state.
Do we think Baylor is going to be the number 5 team in the state of Texas? Because
over
a lot of
TCU
people,
and Houston.
a lot of people might have Dave Aranda still on the hot seat.
I would, if I was doing this list, I would put Tech at 12 and Baylor at 13.
No bias.
Okay,
No bias at all.
No bias at all. Tyler,
Baylor's a little high to me. I think you maybe put them at 7, kind of middle of the pack. Because I do think Dave Aranda's on the hot seat. He kind of did enough to stay afloat last year, but got to do it again.
Here's my hot take, and I don't exactly fully know right now where to put it, but I think SMU belongs in the top 3. They returned a quarterback. They returned a lot of key pieces from a college football playoff team last year.
And it's a wide open ACC.
Yeah, it's a wide open ACC. Probably, if you want to rest on a little bit of the laurels of what happened last season, you flip Tech and SMU in this equation. But I don't argue necessarily that you might not put SMU above A&M and put A&M at number 4 in this a little bit.
You don't have to look at me when you say something like that.
I'm just going back and forth.
Okay,
I'm just kind of.
I just felt your eyes on me.
You didn't even need to mention it because we have the graphic up. So.
That's true.
With that argument, one of those teams did make the playoff last year, so. I guess that's sound logic.
All of this flipping that we're doing with the Texas teams, I cannot wait till we talk about the SEC, how things are going to shake out, because I think that is going to be the wild Southeast.
Well, let's get into that, because I think let's start with the one that we've kind of talked amongst ourselves a little bit with some of these magazines as we've passed them around the old newsroom, and Lindy's was the one that kind of had the most interesting takes. Good old Lindy's College Football Magazine. You got they do regional covers, so this one has Arch and Le'Veon Moss on the front of it, which is nice. I couldn't find that version for our graphics here, but we'll start with their superlatives. One of the 11 most impactful non-quarterback transfers, KC Concepcion, 15 top 15 non-conference games, A&M at Notre Dame. is number 10. Toughest schedules, A&M has the 10th toughest schedule in the country, according to Lindy's. Overall team ranking, they don't have them in the top 25. They have them at number 34. And then when they talk about positional units, national rankings of positional units, they have their wide receiver unit at number 5. Offensive line unit at number 3. I will, spoiler alert from that team ranking, Lindy's does not value Texas A&M's football team very much this year. But we'll get to that in a second. Anything stick out to you here? KC Conception gets a lot of love across all of the preview magazines.
That's the number 5 wide receiver unit in the country and the number 3 offensive line unit in the country.
That is correct.
Okay, I'm just making sure I have that correct.
Yeah, what I don't get is if you have that stacked of a wide receiver room, according to Lindy's, and a number 3 offensive line, which might be the most important unit in all of college football, how are you the 34th ranked team?
That just tells me that these people have to cover a lot of teams, and they did not do anything really in-depth when it came to A&M because the wide receiver unit was one of our biggest problems last year. And if they think that's going to be one of the best in the country...
You bring up a good point. And let me, because I actually, not for this magazine this year, but last year I wrote for Lindy's. I've written for Dave Campbell's before. A lot of times what they do with these is individual team previews and things like that are farmed out to freelancers who cover those teams. And sometimes the magazines ask for input on where do you think these teams are ranked in these different, and a lot of times with those kind of superlatives, it's in-house with the editorial group. So I don't quite know. Lindy's, I don't think, asked me to do any of the kind of superlatives rankings. It was mostly just story writing and kind of some pull-out pieces. But yeah, I don't know. It is interesting to see how in deep they go with different schools because I mean, you have to rank all of them. So they go and rank all 134 this year. So A&M comes in at 34 on that one. Lindy's also has player rankings. They have Le'Veon Moss as the 19th best running back in the country. KC Conception is 10. Armaj Reed Adams is first. Armaj Reed Adams, if you want to go across the board, and I kind of ran out of time to get into some of the All-Americans, but he's probably across the board the highest rated player on A&M's team. He's the first rated guard at Lindy's. Cassius Howell is 12th. Inside linebacker Torian York is 4th. And these are national position rankings. The interesting thing, and we'll go ahead and get into Lindy's order of finish here, which is probably one of the most stark things. You're going to have to go into that second column to find Texas A&M. Number 12 for the brand. They say they're going to finish 12th in the SEC this year, behind Texas is number 1, and then you have them behind the likes of Oklahoma at number 5, Florida at 7,
Missouri
10? At 10, Auburn at 9. The only teams behind A&M in this is Arkansas, Vanderbilt, Kentucky, and Mississippi State in order. What do we think about this?
If A&M finished 12th, that would be the most disappointing season imaginable. Granted, I say that I do think that there's going to be a lot of parity in the SEC. It's probably be one of the most wild conferences we've seen that I don't think is going to be very top heavy. There's probably going to be 7, 8, 9 teams all competing for Atlanta late in the season. But to finish 12th in this conference, I don't see that happen.
Yeah.
Even if it is a more disappointing season for them.
Sure, I think if that happens, there is a whole entire unit or more that is a lot worse than we think they are right now, and that could be ranging from quarterback to secondary play or something like that. Here's the thing: when I first saw that, of course, I got a little, the steam coming out of my ears type of deal, face red, all that. But to their credit, and Tyler mentioned this a little bit too, I think the SEC is maybe even more wide open than it was last year. And it would not shock me at all if we had 1 or 2 conference losses going into the Texas game, and all of a sudden we find ourselves potentially going to Atlanta if we beat Texas again. That would not shock me in the slightest. And so when you look at anything, I mean, I could even start with number 1 because they have Texas at number 1, but when you look at anything beyond like 1 or 2, and then you go all the way down to like 12 or 13, I feel like you can mix and match and kind of set it however you want to. And you also mentioned this, Travis. The one that sticks out to me that's like, really? You have them that high is Oklahoma. I don't see how they have gotten any better from what they did last year, and they had a pretty horrendous season last year with the exception of that Alabama upset, if you even want to call it that. That's the only thing that I like truly have a problem with is having Oklahoma that high. And then you look at it and they have us that low.
You're going to say that Oklahoma has a good defense. They've had a good defense.
Yeah.
And they brought in John Mateer from Washington State, so they have a quarterback thing that they don't think Jackson Arnold was the guy. I mean, the offense has been the problem for Oklahoma since Brent Venables has taken over.
To be fair to them, because I know plenty of OU fans, they could make a meteoric rise. But like improving would be 2 more wins, which would put them 9 in the SEC. So I don't see that happening, even though the conference is wide open and they could surprise. I don't see them making that sort of jump and improvement. I think 5 is way too high for them. Now, I'll hold this until a little bit later, but yeah, you can't take how A&M did last year and all the people returning this year and say, oh yeah, they're number 12, and then look at a team like Oklahoma and go, oh, but they just infused their team with all this talent, so now they're going to finish 5th.
Yeah,
that just doesn't make sense to me.
To me, they're looking at those last 4 games at A&M and really putting a lot of stock into that, of how they finished last year, which was disappointing, and I guess saying that that's just going to roll into next year, which I don't know if that's realistic.
I guess I said I didn't have too much of a problem with this, but now the more that I talk, I guess the more I realize that I do. To me, it seems that they looked at this and said, well, they're A&M, so they'll finish blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And they just put us there.
So we'll look at 2 of these. Oklahoma, because that's the one that the biggest issue they had. And their good news for this conference picks, they say, are reasons why Brent Venables retooled the league's thinnest wide receiver group with major portal additions. They also and then the bad news, the cons, progress will show, but the nation's toughest schedule will keep the Sooners from a top 15 finish. And then their call, the reason why they put them there, watch out for ex-Washington State quarterback John Mateer, who could draw Heisman buzz. So it's going to be firmly on his shoulders, they think,
exactly,
to do this. A&M, their pros were veteran offensive line, brings back 5 starters to protect Marcel Reed and open holes for Le'Veon Moss. Here's the interesting one. The bad news, the cons, pass rush, gone are Shamar Stewart and Nick Scorton. Well, the interesting thing about that is I didn't make a graphic for this, but on their 3rd team all SEC list, they have Cassius Howell, defensive end, who is going to take over from some of that. And then we'll finish with no longer under the cloak of anonymity with Mike Elko. Texas A&M is a marked team and could feel those ramifications.
To me, those are made up. I don't know. Y'all just keep talking because I have things buzzing in my head and I'm trying to formulate words.
Pretty much every one of these magazines pointed to losing Shamar Stewart and Nick Scorton as like one of the biggest possible pitfalls of this team. But that being said, they only combined for like 5 sacks. They were really good at two-hand touching the quarterback.
Yeah. When you look at the production, you're not losing a lot of production. I get that you're losing some crazy athletes and great talent. But yeah, you do have a Cassius Howell that looks like he, production-wise, could be better.
Riley Kennedy wasn't anywhere in any of these either.
Right.
He is in the video game. If you give him a year or so and you're playing A&M, he's one of the best players on defense.
I'm not worried too much about their pass rush. I still am a little... Let's wait and see what the secondary's like. Have they improved? But pass rush, I think, will be fine.
You may have just said this, and I'm just rephrasing it, but I think the powers that be in talking season are taking way too much out of the, hey, we lost all these defensive linemen, and not looking at the entire rest of the team that we are returning. I think they're weighing too much on, we lost 2 dudes who combined for 4.5 sacks on the season. Now, were they great in pressures and things like that? And was Nick good on the run and stuff? Sure, totally. But yeah, I think that the production will be found elsewhere.
You bring in a good point, because that's something that Athlon gets into a little bit more than Lindy's. Athlon, of course, here is one common theme you can see from all of these is that who's this that's been on the front of all a lot of Arch Manning features this year in these preview magazines. But here's Athlon superlatives for Texas A&M. They ranked them number 19th in the preseason top 25. Their preseason top 25. They, interestingly enough, have A&M going to the Gator Bowl to face SMU.
I like that matchup.
That would be a fun matchup for sure.
A matchup they could actually just do at Waco ISD Stadium and just save everybody a lot of money. They have them as nationally the number 4 running back unit and the number 3 offensive line unit. Interestingly enough, in Lindy's, they mentioned Le'Veon Moss, but not a lot of talk about that running back depth. And then, of course, and again, top transfers list, Casey Concepcion, the wide receiver. But here is what they offer a little bit more of. They kind of break down and rank the position groups for each conference. Offensively, for A&M in the SEC, they have them as 10th at quarterback. They don't really value Marcel Reed a whole lot. And weirdly enough, 9th at wide receiver, even though Lindy's had them as one of the best wide receiver groups in the country. But they have them as the best offensive line and the second best running back group on offense. When you look at the defense, let's see.
You hit the wrong button.
I hit the wrong button. I guess it copied it over weird.
Oh, man.
But I can find that. But well, first let's talk about the offensive. What do you think about some of these?
I would love to talk about it. Tyler, did you have something immediately?
Go for it, Max.
Okay, so here's my thing, and I'm gonna pick on Dave again a little bit, and I'm trying not to keep going back to the 5 OU versus 12 A&M thing. I'm trying to drop it, but I think that Dave Campbell's biggest flaw there was saying, well, if Marcel Reed takes the next step, they're going to do this and that. Yeah, totally. If Marcel Reed improves as a quarterback, we are going to have a good record, right? But again, I don't think people are looking at all of the pieces around him that have gotten better. So if you take baseline Marcel Reed and what he was able to do last season, and you do not change it at all, his floor is going to go up because of the returning offensive line, because of the returning running back production, because of the way better upgrade in the wide receiver room, because of, hopefully, continued improvement along the tight end, which we know Colin Klein loves to use in the passing game. So, to me, it's Marcel Reed could be a little bit worse and somehow still have better stats than last year because of all the returning talent around him. I will say this until I'm blue in the face. If he doesn't turn the ball over, we are going to win at least 8 games. If he does take that progression or whatever, a next step, and starts completing deep balls and things like that, we are going to win at least 9 games. If he combines that with his ability to make plays on his feet, we will win 10 games or more. And I don't think that that's unreasonable considering the offensive talent that is returning. Now, defense, we kind of have to put a little blind faith that Elko knows how to figure it out. But I'm not worried about the offense. And I feel like some people think I'm crazy for saying that.
No, I think you kind of hit the nail on the head with that. As far as because of the run game that they have in the offensive line, yeah, Marcel Reed doesn't have to be great to have a decent season. Then you throw in the possibility, well, what if he is great? Well,
yeah,
that just takes you to a whole other level.
Sure.
I don't think you need that stellar quarterback play with the way this team is constructed. But again, why would he not take at least a little bit of a step forward?
Yeah, and this is the last time I'm going to mention it, just because to that point, why would you look at the way that this team is and see all that's returning around it, and then look at another team who has all of these question marks on offense and say, oh, well, they got a transfer quarterback and a new offensive coordinator, and then bump them up to 5? That doesn't make sense to me. That's just... That to me, that is ludicrous.
I will say too. Now I know he's one of the 40 under 40. I liked some things I saw from Colin Klein last year. There were also a lot of question marks I saw from his play. So that's another thing that I want to see.
Like running the ball on 2nd and long.
Yeah,
that was my least favorite thing that he did, and also his 4th and short play calls. But he's also a very young offensive coordinator, so you have to think that he's adjusting things. Maybe I'm putting
he is a Dave Campbell's 40 under 40.
That's great. I'm so proud. I'm proud of him, and a Heisman runner-up.
I'm talking about Colin Klein.
Yeah,
Colin Klein was a
Heisman. Yeah. You're right.
Or maybe 2nd runner-up.
Yeah. No, he was
runner-up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So here's the defense. We got the defense squared away. That's the order finish. Here is the defense.
You can do this. There it is.
There it is. Defensive line, 12th. Linebackers, 6th. Defensive backs, 11th. And this is in the SEC.
So that's where I think you can start making the claim that, like, okay, well, A&M's not going to do as great this year, is the question marks on defense. But that's just not what I've seen in these publications. Like, people have just been, like, dogging the offense like that's what there is to worry about. To me, it's the defense you need to worry about. Mm-hmm. So I don't particularly have a problem with this. And especially on paper, you do look at those super talented guys that have left, and so it makes sense to rate them in the bottom half for defensive line. Linebacker, I think that's pretty good. Like, Scooby flashed at moments, and you've got the experience.
He's going to be healthy.
Right. And then the defensive back play, I think you could even make it a little bit lower. I think they gave them a couple extra ones just because there is a lot of talent on the back end. But the way that we finished the season, you can't be mad at that ranking either.
No. And they brought in one potential game changer on that, and they'll bring Tyreek Chappelle back. So.
Right. I think a lot. What 12 seems low to me, but benefit of the doubt, I think a lot of that is just kind of the unknown.
I think so.
What does their depth actually look like when you lose Nick and Shamar? But I do think that they are going to be better than the 12th best in the SEC.
And a lot of talk about the defensive ends when the defensive line, but the guy that Mike Elko wanted to talk a lot about during talking season is Albert Regis.
Yeah, they bring him
on the
back.
defensive line, which is a big returning guy.
Man, that is so huge. Like, even if you only get him for 50% of the reps, like a guy with that kind of experience and that kind of size, that's awesome. In fact, I thought that he graduated. I didn't know that he was coming back until that presser that he started mentioning him. I just assumed he was gone.
Over 40 years ago, my parents started C&J Barbecue, and today we continue to honor Dad's legacy with the best barbecue in the Brazos Valley. With locations on Harvey Road, Southwest Parkway, and our newest location on William Joe Bryan, we carry on our family tradition of serving up award-winning barbecue, sides, and desserts. We also offer delivery, catering, as well as custom menus and private chef services. Come visit us today for some of the best barbecue around. C&J Barbecue. The C is for Chip, the J is for Joe, and the barbecue is for you.
So let's look at the order of finish here. This is Athlon's SEC order of finish. Again, common theme, Texas at the top of a lot of these. Though here A&M comes in at number 8, and that is behind number 2 Georgia, LSU, Alabama, Florida, South Carolina, Ole Miss. Here Oklahoma is 9, and then they have Auburn at 11, Missouri at 12. The 13 through 16, Arkansas, Vanderbilt, Kentucky, Mississippi State is kind of all in there. Tennessee at number 10. This feels a little closer to reality.
Yeah, I think so.
Than the Lindy's one. And you mentioned it, Max. I think both of y'all kind of mentioned it in separate instances that 2 through 10, I could see any combination of any of those teams 2 through 10, maybe 3 through 10.
Just say 1 through 10. Like, why is it a foregone conclusion with everybody that Texas is going to win the SEC? They didn't last year, by the way. They did not. People forget. They didn't.
True.
They did not win the SEC last year.
I'm not saying that it's a shoo-in for them to win the SEC, but who else are you going to put in there?
Sure.
If you have to make a ranking right now in a prediction, that just makes the most sense to me.
Okay.
Well, that's interesting. I'm going to skip ahead real quick because we'll get the last one done here, and that is Phil Steele's. We'll go back to his superlatives.
There you go.
But this is a little different. They have Georgia on top. They have Phil Steele has A&M at 6. And Texas at number 2. A lot of teams, another one, Alabama. Like, they have talent, but they didn't necessarily prove everything last year. I don't know. Here's Phil Steele's: Georgia, Texas, Alabama, Oklahoma, LSU, Texas A&M, Florida, Ole Miss, Tennessee, South Carolina are the top 10.
Any of those top 10 teams, honestly, I could see. Granted, I don't know why Oklahoma's 4 in this one, but I could see any of these top 10 teams vying for a spot in Atlanta in November.
Yeah, I think so. I agree with that. And maybe if Oklahoma does make a crazy jump, they could be on there too. I don't mean to keep crapping on Oklahoma. I really don't. But
they have probably the highest ceiling and the lowest floor of any of these top 10 teams.
I don't have a huge problem with that. I do think Texas has the highest ceiling, and
sure.
But
the highest ceiling combined with the lowest floor
Gotcha. I see what you're saying.
Is Oklahoma.
Yeah.
Sure.
Texas. I don't see Texas finishing outside the top 4. in the SEC this year. I don't see Georgia finishing outside the top 6 or 7. South Carolina might be another one that has an argument for highest floor and ceiling, and A&M has one for highest floor and ceiling.
South Carolina and Florida, to me, could be very sophomore slump-ish. Like, I think they're putting a lot of faith in both Lagway and Sellers. But I will also say in the same breath that I'm really glad we're playing both of those teams at home this year.
Mm-hmm. Not a whole lot of love for LSU either, and who returns one of the most experienced quarterbacks in the country.
Which one had LSU at 2? Somebody did.
Lindy's had LSU at 2.
Yeah, I mean...
Yeah, I could see LSU winning the SEC. You know, if Garrett Nussmeier just puts on a Heisman-worthy season.
And he absolutely could. He's a very good quarterback. And anybody who picks LSU to finish in the top 4 in any given year, I can't really argue with it because LSU is always going to have the talent. They are always going to have that home field advantage. And, yeah.
Florida to me is the Florida and South Carolina. I mean, you say, you could see them both having sophomore slumps. I could see them both having stellar seasons because of their quarterback play. I do think Lagway is legit. If they figure out, him being the starter day one moving forward, I think Florida could be a dangerous team. But it's one of those things that, again, any of those top 10 teams, we're not in the Nick Saban dynasty era anymore where you can shoe in Alabama to win. Like, yes, Texas and Georgia are probably the strongest right now, but it's wide open.
I think it will be a lot of times you look at a season, you go, well, at about this point in October, we'll kind of know how where we stand and stuff like that. I think we'll be past Halloween, and in a lot of ways, we'll still have no idea how things are going to shake out because there are so many consequential November games that, I think it'll still be wide open in November. And I think if you're an A&M fan, you just hope that you're still a part of the conversation by that point because of the parity and because it is a pretty difficult schedule.
Let's skip to our last magazine publication here, and that's Phil Steele. And kind of hard to say. Phil Steele magazine, which I always go get one of these. This is kind of, if Dave Campbell's is the Bible of Texas football, this is kind of the Bible of national football because Phil, if you've never scrolled through one of these or flipped through, there is an impossible amount of information in here. It looks like what we get as game notes for games, and those are done just for each individual game. I mean, it's ridiculous. And he has all these proprietary formulas and whatnot to rank things. I kind of pulled a few of them out. So they have an all-meathead team, which is the combination of like grit, toughness, and loyalty. Let me make sure I got that right. Yeah, grit, toughness, and loyalty. Torian York is on there. He's the only A&M. They have A&M as the second most experienced team by a metric that calculates number of seniors and then gives point totals for juniors, sophomores, whatever, also transfers. 6th nationally, most experienced team, according to Phil Steele. The number 14 toughest schedule, and then Phil Steele always puts out a surprise team. Like that one team, probably last year would have been SMU or Indiana. That one team that just overachieves so much probably would make the playoff. Maybe Arizona State could fall in that, but Indiana, SMU probably were a little bit more in that category. They have a surprise team. They have A&M at number 2 in that. And I forgot, I actually didn't write down who his number 1 surprise team was. That is, and I didn't write down the page either, but I'll get that in a second. But that is kind of a big deal because that is the team that he thinks probably has the most upside this season, and he only ranks 2 of them. So number 1 and number 2, A&M was number 2. He did unit breakdowns as well. Here is offense for A&M. Offensive line and running back, both number 1 in the SEC. Wide receiver number 9, quarterback number 7. What do we think?
Interesting on the surprise team. I look at the experience part, and that to me, when you start talking about how experienced they are, it kind of almost raises their floor a little bit to me.
Yeah, I think it absolutely does. Like, that's why with the Campbells 5 and 7, like, sure, we could lose 7 games, but I would be shocked and very pissed.
Right.
So the surprise team, his number 1 surprise team, and he does actually rank. He ranks 17 of them. But the number 1 is one we've talked about at length in this podcast.
Is
Oklahoma.
it the Sooners?
It is the Sooners
Yeah,
that he has as their number
a
one.
lot of people are high
team.
on them.
And that's fine. I'm in believe it when I see it mode with Venables. But again, I don't hate OU. When I see them that high, it just makes me go, I don't know
I
about
don't
that.
see what with anything last year
But-
how that gives you any confidence that they'll.
Let me build off of while Travis is reading this biblical level of length magazine.
Here, let's just-
the
It's
text.
It's a lot of words.
The
Impressive.
text is so
See if
small.
let's go Cam
Yeah,
2 here.
there's a lot of words.
Wow. Anyway, which Phil Steele, we if you know a lot about college football and analytics and stuff like that, Phil Steele is one of the guys, and so it's got
really
everything
actually like covering up
you
your
could
face
want. That's fine.
as much as I
That's
can
probably
in this
fine
podcast.
because these HD lights make me realize that of all the time I've spent outside this summer, I'm still a ghost. Anyway,
hasn't done much.
Let me expand on the point that you made about discipline and just seasoned players, right? And how that could bring up the floor. You look at some of the biggest problems that the A&M team faced last year. It was the random personal foul by a Shamar. It was the random face mask penalty, or it was something that would like stall a drive. And you could also start getting into play calling and the defensive back field not doing their job towards the end of the game. Against Texas, they were gaining 4, 5, 6 yards of carry, stuff like that. So obviously there were things to fix. But if you look at the returning production and you listen to what Elko's talking about like building this culture and things like that, and some of the biggest, I think, most fixable things, hopefully those are a lot more marginal when it comes to the grand scheme of things next year. And yes, some of our away games are going to be very, very hard to win. But I can't help but be high on the team again, even though it was a very disappointing finish. That's just where I sit with it. And I think the biggest reason is the offense. And I'm kind of giving Elko the benefit of the doubt on defense.
So this year, Phil's surprise teams: Oklahoma, Texas A&M, Illinois, Utah, USC, Arizona, Nebraska, Baylor, SMU, Iowa State. Kind of going back, last year he had Boise and Clemson as his number 1 and 2. Year before was Wisconsin and Washington. USC, TCU in 2022.
What year was the TCU Natty?
2022.
Whoa.
No, he didn't have that. Sorry, it was USC and Penn State was his number 2. And in 2020, A&M was his number 1 surprise team.
Well, that was their best year in recent memory.
Yeah, so he has a pretty good hit rate on some of those things.
Yeah, I mean it's fair to call them one of the top 2 surprise teams because again, I think their floor is raised, the ceiling is raised as well. It's just a matter of can they actually play up to the ceiling.
Yeah, I think. I don't know. When you talk about a ceiling and you put it at 10-2, for a second I'm like, well, no, the ceiling is 12-0.
Right. Technically, anyone's ceiling is 12-0.
It's the reasonable ceiling, right? And I think if you're super gung ho about A&M and you talk about a reasonable ceiling, I do think that you have to account for the road schedule that we have. I think there's a very strong case to be made that we're undefeated at Kyle this year. But that we drop one, maybe to Notre Dame, maybe obviously like at Texas,
You're
at
going
LSU,
to Baton Rouge, yeah.
And you know what? We're going to play in Fayetteville for the first time in over 10 years. So we could randomly drop that game. I think if we're sitting at 10-2, obviously we're trying to get to Atlanta by that point. But I think also if we're 9-3 at the end of the season, assuming that loss is to Notre Dame, I think we're in the top 3 or 4 SEC teams, and we're potentially going to Atlanta. I think 9-3, assuming that one of those losses is to Notre Dame.
Let me do a little housekeeping here because we skipped over Phil Steele's defensive unit. Defensive line 7, linebacker 3. He has their defensive back as number 1 in
I
the
love
SEC.
that. That's wonderful.
What was it, 11 on
Yeah.
Athlon? So
I was supposed to say, did you leave off a 1 on there?
Athlon was 11. Phil Steele was number 1 defensive unit, and then no one else. He was the only one that do special teams, and they have them at number 3. Can this be the number 1 defensive back unit in the SEC?
I think it can be, but I think it's kind of wild that you'd put them over, say, I hate to mention this, Texas.
Yeah.
because of their, returning production and talent and all that good stuff. But I suppose it's possible. I mean, you've got Will Lee, and assuming Tyreek Chappelle is back and healthy and good to go, you've those are the two guys that you like think of shoring up that defensive backfield, right? And Bryce Anderson, there's things to be said about him, playing through injuries and stuff like that. So yeah, I don't know.
Here's some interesting stats for you. He actually goes through and projects what he thinks the season stats are going to be for every team in the country. This guy has so little time on his hands, probably. So, if just for reference, he thinks that A&M's offensive rushing offense will gather 212.7 yards per game.
Hell yeah.
Pass 228.8 per game.
Cool.
Offensive points 35.4. Defensive will allow 121.3 rushing, 193.8 passing, 21.1 points, and they have them as a yard differential of 26.3 and a points differential of 14.3 in the plus. I mean, that's going to be a good season if they can put up those kind of numbers.
I would agree.
I'm trying to look as far as rushing. That would put them leading the SEC in rushing if they do that per game. And passing, they'd be middle of the pack. Points, that would put them, they actually have this, they put them fifth in points and pretty close to fifth in points allowed, too. So, interesting to percolate on. That puts them about, what did he have them as order of finish? Sixth. So most of those stats have them about fifth in the conference.
I just want to give one more shout out to my buffet boys, the offensive line. I've said that term before.
I don't know if you have.
The buffet boys?
Yeah.
Guys who are always at the buffet. That's the offensive line. That was what one of our middle school coaches called the offensive line. Was a buffet boy.
Buffet boy.
All of these magazines have that offensive line unit as, I think, collectively being the best unit. Mm-hmm. And to me, besides the other side of the ball, that's the most important thing. That's the biggest unit. That is the hardest to get really good. It's not the hardest to get a lot of returning talent because offensive linemen, pretty typically will stay till their senior year and get their draft stuck up over going their junior year. So that part's not as hard. But to get from tackle to tackle such a solid unit, especially of returning talent, is very hard to do. And they were already exceeding expectations last year, especially from the year before. And with another year under their belts, I mean, you talk about the running back talent. We upgraded at wide receiver. Again, the more that I think about it, the more I can talk myself into this is going to be a dominating offense as long as the quarterback takes care of the ball.
Well, you look at 2020, the team that went 9-1, and
that's
they had
exactly what I'm thinking about.
A great offensive line.
Joe Moore Award finalist.
Yeah, it was that experienced group that have been playing together. This is, if you follow that same trajectory, this team could be in for some special things because of that offensive line. And you look at all those down years with Jimbo, one of their worst units was the offensive line. So it's really a strong correlation of team success.
We may not have Spiller and Achane in the backfield, but I would argue that Moss is better than Spiller was.
He's different.
He's different for sure. He's kind of like a bowling ball. He's kind of more the Keith Ford type of running back. I would say maybe like Trey Carson's bowling ball level of moving forward with Keith Ford's speed. Mm-hmm. But I don't think Reuben Owens is as good as Achane was. But we also didn't use Achane a ton in 2020.
Right.
So. I don't know.
He had a big Orange Bowl that year.
That he did.
So some interesting tidbits before we go on from Phil Steele that I just made graphics for. Nationally, he ranked all the units. Offensive line number 4. Defensive backs number 5 in the nation. The 5th best defensive back group. So we'll have to come back to that this season. Running backs number 9. That makes up the top 10. He has quarterback at 24.
I tell you what. I will go as far as to say this. If that really does happen, if we really do collectively have the best defensive backfield or the top 5 defensive backfield in the country, we are making the playoffs. I don't know how you can convince me otherwise. If our defensive backfield improves that much, that means we're probably creating turnovers. And that means we are gaining a lot of yardage on offense, and so we're limiting the amount of plays that we have to be on defense. I don't know how you can. Am I crazy right now? I mean, it's July, so
yes, you're crazy, but it has nothing to do about football.
Yeah, that's true.
So let's look real quickly at the video game, something that's close, near and dear to Max and I's heart. They put this out, top 10 overall schools in the game. Texas A&M comes in at number 8, and that is so small that I can't. Can you read what their overall ranking is there, Tyler?
I can walk up to the screen if you need me to.
It looks like an 88.
I think it is 88. I think
overall. Top 10 offensive players. Amaj Reed Adams comes in at number 7 at a 90 overall. That's kind of fits the All-American lists that are on some of these magazines. And then A&M put out the whole ranking. Tyler, you might need to help us out there a little bit.
Yeah, Marge with 93. You got a couple 90 players. Concepcion. You got Torian York as a 90. Le'Veon Moss right there, 80. Interesting that they've got Moss, I don't know, below Concepcion.
The developers, if I remember correctly, were very high on all of our running backs, from E.J. Smith back up to Le'Veon Moss.
Yeah.
Because Reuben Owens comes in here also in the top, what is it, 16 players that they put on here?
Yeah, you got... Yeah, Cassius Howell's your first. Is right there, 88. You got
there you
Dalton
go.
Brooks in there, 87. That's a kind of a surprise to me. Yeah. With that, and I guess if you got that kind of play from Dalton Brooks,
that's what I'm saying.
There's your top 5 unit back there, defensive back. There's Willie the Blanket, 87. You got Chase Basantis, 86, and Reuben Owens in there too. So you got 2 running backs in there as some of your top-rated players.
We've talked about this before. Why if you're gonna play with A&M and you're gonna maybe make a custom playbook, throw the bone in there, man. Throw the wishbone in there. Let
Power Eye.
Power Eye. I'm more of a wishbone guy myself, but throw the bone in there. Maybe put or a full house pistol.
Yeah, I was gonna say the pistol. Like Klein knows how to run it that way, in nice 2-back formations.
You got Le'Veon behind you, maybe Reuben on one side and Amari on the other. You could even throw maybe like a Theo on the side over there too.
You could go full wing T too.
You could go full wing T. Just run the veer.
Yeah, throw some. You see that in Texas high school football all the time.
Tyler, you don't have any gaming systems, do you?
For this, no, I don't.
No.
I do. Yeah, I'm more of a Switch guy.
You need to.
I was gonna say Super Nintendo.
With any free time that you might have,
that still works.
Yeah. Any free time you might
Super
not have in the
Nintendo.
future, we need to get you one so that we can get you in on our dynasties and whatnot.
Yeah.
Can I say
it's the trash talking?
And I forget. It was from a podcast that I listened to recently, and I can't attribute who it was because I already forgot. But somebody mentioned the lack of a possession wide receiver on offense this year, and how that could be the one thing that this offense is lacking. And before it was, I guess, Noah Thomas, but you could pretty easily replace that with a good year from Theo, or a good year from, I forget who the Texas transfer was.
Why wouldn't that be Terry Bussey?
Oh man! See, we didn't even mention him.
Yeah.
I mean, well,
that's a big
Bussey's not that. He's not that tall, is he?
No,
but Christian Kirk wasn't that tall, and
that's
he was
true.
possession receiver.
And he was that guy. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, all right, never mind.
Mario Craver is another guy we haven't mentioned. Isaiah Williams,
dude. Ashton Bethel Roman, to me, this is the most talent we've had at the wide receiver position, maybe since Christian Kirk was here. It's that Courtney Davis and Kendrick and all them.
Reynolds was he? Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
You could argue those units, but I think it's been a long time since we could be this excited about the offensive weapons.
I'll be curious to see if they had that go up and get it wide receiver, because even for as much talent as they had in that group, they didn't really have. I mean, Christian Kirk was speedy, but he wasn't they didn't use him as a deep threat a whole lot. They used him more across the middle of the field.
Like a playmaker, right.
And they didn't necessarily have the guy. Josh Reynolds was a guy who could do that, but he wasn't really utilized that way very often.
I think back then you were hoping that it would be Ricky Seals-Jones. But.
Yes, and he wasn't really that either. He went on to be a tight end in the NFL.
Y'all remember Cam Clear? Do you remember Cam Clear? Never mind. He was a
No.
tight end. It's okay.
I just remember.
I think he played in the UFL for a little while.
Who's the former wide receiver that's like now doing bobsled racing?
Labhart.
No, not
Isn't that
Labhart.
Travis Labhart?
It's
Gaston Lamascus.
It's Niederhoff. Boone
Boone
Niederhofer.
Niederhofer, man.
I just remember. I think it was Boone Niederhofer that in one of the spring games early on scored a touchdown and punted the ball into the stands.
That's great.
There's always a spring game superstar.
Yeah, he
And
was
that's
one of
fun.
them, and he
Yeah.
actually turned out to be a decent little
Yeah.
wide receiver for the.
And there is just amazing Vine that I think was eventually turned into a GIF of him dancing and doing this like amazing neck movement dance.
Love it.
Anyway, I feel like we've lost the
narrative.
Yeah.
A few other just tidbits. Lindy's All-American team. First team they had Amaj Reed Adams. That he was the only All-American there. Athlon first team was Torian York. Second team Armaj Reed Adams. Then you go over All SEC for Athlon was Armaj Reed Adams and Torian York. Phil Steele. Their All SEC team had Trey Zune and Will Lee first team. Second team Le'Veon Moss, Chase Basantis. Third team Armaj Reed Adams, Albert Regis, Torian York. Fourth team Casey Concepcion, Cassius Howell, punter Tyler White, and long snapper Jacob Green. Because yes, Phil Steele power ranks the long snappers,
and he ought to.
And then that's pretty much first team. The All Texas team. First team running back Le'Veon Moss, offensive line Trey Zune, offensive line Marjorie Adams, kicker Randy Bond.
Okay.
And
I
then
think
first
that's a little
team
underrated.
D All Texas team for Dave Campbell's defensive tackle Aldo Regis, cornerback Will Lee, and they have utility Torian York. I guess maybe thinking he plays some nickel or something. I don't
Maybe.
know why utility.
Don't sleep on Randy Bond there.
Well, and before we wrap this up, this has been a lot of y'all just kind of letting me talk and go off on these rants and raves about how I think we're going to be pretty good this year, and there hasn't been a lot of resistance from y'all. Is that because y'all are just letting me say my piece and
It's
then
July.
kind of waiting, or is it because you guys think I'm actually making a couple good points?
I think it's July.
Yeah.
And we've got plenty of time.
I refuse to give you the joy of saying that I think you made a few good points. So I'm just gonna say we're gonna have a preview episode here. So this was a little bit more fun. What you think? We'll get into the numbers, the real nitty gritty. No, you did a good job. It was fine.
Wow, thanks, Travis.
You made some good points.
Okay.
Here,
We didn't even really talk about recruiting, by the way.
no, and that can be a whole separate podcast here coming up. Let's close it out with this because I love to roast you. I was asked to be on the Dave Campbell's Texas Football Writers Poll, where they asked 5 or 10 questions, and I pulled some of those here. So here is me on the Dave Campbell's Texas Football Writer Poll. I said the best FBS head coach in Texas is Rhett Lashley at SMU. To me, it was probably a decision between him and Sark. And if you're going to ask me a question about who is doing the best coaching job, I'm going to lean towards the guy who's arguably doing more with less. And I think that's Rhett Lashley over necessarily Steve Sarkisian. Texas coach on the hot seat, Dave Aranda at Baylor. I don't buy into their rankings that Baylor is going to be like the 5th best team in Texas. Freshman impact, Khalid Lockett at Texas, the freshman who will probably make the most instant impact. Transfer with the most instant impact, KC Concepcion at A&M. And I picked Jeremiah Smith as my preseason Heisman winner. What do we think?
Wide receiver at Heisman. That's kind of bold.
Yeah. Trends have. I feel like some of the historical. The people are more cognizant of the fact of that are voters that it always tends to land on the quarterback, and so you have some. We've had some defensive linemen. Last year with Travis Hunter, a wide receiver and a defensive back. Like I think there's a trend that it can be more than the quarterback amongst the voters. So I went with the wide receiver.
Yeah, I would just I'd find it hard. Back-to-back years wide receiver, but I I think it's pretty logical. I think Dave Aranda is for sure on a hot seat. And yeah, you can make the argument maybe Steve Sarkisian is the best FBS head coach. But I mean, I get your reasoning of what SMU was able to do. So
I don't have any real notes other than to be annoying and say I can't help but notice that you did not put a certain school from Lubbock in the transfer impact one.
I didn't.
True.
I didn't. I think honestly though here's the fun part. So they asked me to do this in early March, which would have been past the first transfer window, but I think it was before Micah Hudson went back to Tech, which I'm not saying that I would have put him there, but that was a whole funny thing too. A couple of other ones they asked who would pick all the conferences that are represented in the state. I had Miami winning the ACC, Texas Tech winning the Big 12, Texas winning the SEC, Tulane winning the American, Liberty winning Conference USA, and I have Oregon winning the national championship. My hottest take of 2025 in 10 words or less, the first year of revenue sharing will make the season very chalky.
What does that mean? What do you mean by chalky?
Not a whole lot of upsets.
Oh, okay. So kind of boring?
Kind of boring. I think so.
You think it's going to be a boring football season?
I think it's going to be a boring football season.
Okay, how about this? I will concede that and say that it really looks like it's going to be super interesting through like mid-November, and then by the time the playoff rankings come out, we'll be able to be like, okay, it's going to be this, that, and that.
And chalky is a little bit relative to the SEC because you don't have like Alabama anymore, but I do think Texas is just going to run the slate in the SEC. I think a lot of people who were picked to win are going to ultimately win. That kind of chalky, maybe a few upsets, but I don't know. Do
you want a very random hot take?
Go always.
Or even just like a question that I could pose to you
guys.
Hold
on, let's.
How much time do we even have left in the recording? We're good, right? Okay.
Oh yeah, we're
at a minute.
It'd been running. It'd been running for a while during our mic checks too.
Could the Egg Bowl be for Lane Kiffin's job at the end of this coming season?
No.
You don't think?
No, because I don't.
You don't think that's possible?
Well, anything is possible.
Okay.
But I don't think Mississippi State is going to be good enough to make that even a worry.
Could the Iron Bowl
you don't think Mississippi
be for Hugh
the
Freeze's
Egg Bowl
job?
Is so crazy. You don't think Mississippi State would beat Ole Miss?
I just don't think Mississippi State's that good.
They're not. But that doesn't mean that they can't beat Ole Miss.
It's the Egg Bowl.
It is the Egg Bowl.
It is the Egg Bowl.
That's all I'm saying. I think that
does a player on one of the teams make the dog fire hydrant situation? Because that completely changes my take on this.
I don't think that's going to happen again. I will say that I think there's an SEC coach that not a lot of people are thinking about right now who will be coaching for their job come the end of the season. I think it could be Freeze, and I don't know why I think it could be Kiffin, but I just do. We can talk about that in more detail later.
I think Kiffin would have as much as old, what's his name up at Missouri? Why I forgot his
Eli
name.
Drinkwitz.
Eli Drinkwitz. Like I would put I don't see, and with what, it's interesting because you have to think about it either way. And this was maybe a little bit of the Jimbo Fisher argument too.
Or what about Beamer?
Kiffin does so good in the portal and brings in talent, but then it's what do you do with that talent? Like that ultimately, I don't know. Maybe you have something here. Maybe you're onto something.
We could have several SEC coaches on hot seats this year. And that's just because of
the way that it is,
the parity and everything, and
that's just the way it is.
That sounds like a whole nother podcast for this slow summertime.
Wonderful, can't wait.
Delve into.
Can't wait.
Well, thank you to all these magazines for letting me kind of just rip your content. Be sure to go pick. There's plenty. There's so much to read in all of these magazines.
That Phil Steele one, if you gave it to me today, I would not be done with it before the end of the year.
And it's the thickest of all of them. Like it's
that's
wild.
Awesome, but
I take this to SEC Media Days with me every year because it helps me formulate some questions and know what I'm doing and talking about. So that's always good. But yeah, pick up some of these. They're really great to read through. Some really great writing in there. I know a lot of people who do these, so great people. Be sure to check KBTX.com for all our continuing coverage this summer of football and everything in between. Check these guys out on the broadcasts, and we'll be back next week on the Aggie Gameday Extra Podcast. For Tyler Shaw and Max Crawford, I'm Travis Brown. We'll see you next week.